turned on.
No, let's schedule it.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the House Committee on Education for its very first time for our 2016 session. And so I'll call that to order. Our order of agenda, what we're going to do is have an organizational meeting and vote on rules. Any committee introductions that we need, but hopefully you all know us. And then we'll have the public hearings where we probably won't have any work sessions today. So with that, I would like to open up an organizational meeting to seek a motion to adopt committee rules.
Chair Doherty, I move to adopt the proposed committee rules.
Okay. Rep. Frederick moves to adopt the proposed committee rules. Is there any discussion? You all got them online, and I think they're pretty much the same committee rules you have for every committee. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Representative Barretto.
Aye.
Representative Hack.
Here.
Representative McLean.
Aye.
Representative Peluso.
Here? Or aye?
Representative Rubin.
Aye.
Representative Wilson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Frederick.
Yes.
Vice Chair Springer.
Say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, it's attendance, yeah.
Chair Doherty.
Aye.
We just changed all of them.
Yes. And Representative Hack, if you clarify that you said you were voting in the affirmative and not that you were here?
Aye. Yes, ma'am. It's been a little while since we've been here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, the motion passes. And how about real quickly, we just start with the Representative McLean. You guys introduce yourselves and where you're from.
I'm Representative McLean, and I'm from the Forest Grove, Cornelius, and West Hillsborough area in Washington County.
Gavel to you for a little bit. Okay.
I'm Representative Carl Wilson, Grants Pass, House District 3.
I'm Jeff Reardon, State Representative District 48, which is Lentz. It's sort of outer southeast Portland down into parts of Happy Valley, former school board member and former high school teacher.
I'm Sherry Springer, State Representative from House District 17. I'm from Scio. I represent the communities of Scio, Lebanon, Sweet Home, Waterloo, Staten, Sublimity, Gates, Mill City, Lyons, Detroit, and Idana.
Very good. I'm Margaret Doherty. I represent House District 35, which is Tigard in southwest Portland.
I'm Lou Frederick, State Representative from District 43. That's north and northeast Portland. Lloyd Center, Emmanuel Hospital, Concordia University, and a good bit of the King and Woodlawn neighborhoods.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Jody Hack, and I represent House District 19, which is South Salem, Almsville, and Turner.
My name is Carla Peluso. I represent the great city of Gresham with a small slice of Portland, and I also chair the Gresham-Barlow School Board.
I'm Greg Barretto. I'm from District 58, gorgeous northeastern Oregon, Wallowa County, Union County, and part of Umatilla County.
Okay, thank you very
The
much.
huge town of Cove.
Yes, we're...
So with that, we close the organizational meeting, and I'm going to turn over the gavel to Representative Springer for a couple of minutes as I leave.
Okay, looks like we're going to open up a public hearing on House Bill 4022. Do all four of you want to come up at the same time? No. Okay. Lori Sattenspiel, and while you're coming forward, Richard's going to tell us what this bill does.
Sure.
And then Jim Green, Chuck Bennett, you guys want to come together?
Yeah, I think Chuck.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 4022.
Oh, and I open a public hearing on 4022.
House Bill 4022 exempts retired members of the PERS system from limitations on reemployment if the reemployment will be as a speech-language pathologist or speech-language pathology assistant. It recreates an existing expired provision that sunsetted this year and extends the sunset to 2026.
Okay. And does Chuck want to join you? Do you want Chuck to join you? Chuck is going to join you.
Welcome, Chuck. Here comes Chuck.
Sorry.
Madam Chair. Lori Sattenspiel for the Oregon School Boards here in support of House Bill 4022. Thanks to the committee administrator. Great overview. This is a re-up of the speech-language pathologist exemption. due to shortages in the pathology services that we offer to our districts. This has been in place since 2007, so it's been in place a while, and it goes away this month, and this bill would move it out to 2026. I was at the COSA conference this weekend, and I had a superintendent come up to me and said, "Are you guys re-upping the speech pathology exemption?" And I said, "Well, we're working on it." And he said, "I'll tell you, North Lake is 100 miles from Lakeview, about the same as Bend, and they've contracted with High Desert in recent years for services. The folks they've contracted been reluctant to make commitments to come to North Lake. They have an educational assistant is trying to work on her SLP EA licensure. They've been very frustrated because without one of them down there, those students have no services. So this is something that they really do need, and we're just here to offer and lend support." Take any questions?
Chuck, why don't you, and then we'll, if we have questions.
Thank you. Excuse me. My name is Chuck Bennett. I represent the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators. Yeah, we're also in support of this bill. It's one that is extremely important to a number of districts. I think we talked a little about it when the bill was introduced in terms of its impact on the PERS, or whether or not people were that whole double dipping idea. I want to just kind of make real clear. Number one, people under this program do not receive additional PERS. In fact, for districts, this is a cost saver because they're not paying PERS for people who come in. Thank you. Under this program, we will probably be back during the long session to talk to you in addition about other shortage areas, particularly in special ed almost across the board. These specialties are just plain not being filled at this point. There's just a shortage of these kinds of teachers and specialists across the state. This is the one, though, that at this point the sunset is occurring, and we wanted to be sure to get it extended into the future, and we'll come back and visit with you about others in the future as we get a chance to get a real clear picture on what the shortages look like. So we encourage you to move this bill forward.
Thank you. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chuck, I don't pretend to know how the world of supply and demand works here, but for those students who you want to see take this track to alleviate the long-term shortage, if the jobs are being filled this way, I would think it would indicate to them that there is no shortage. And so I'm wondering how this works. You know, you want those who are in school to be looking at this situation and saying, hey, I'm going to take that particular job track because there's a need for it. But my question is, when we fill the jobs in this particular way, and I know a lot of districts like to save money doing this, and that's great, but it tends to give a false picture, I would think, as to how open that field is. Your comments?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Wilson. In a way, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think that in just sort of looking at it from today, you might say that. I mean, I see where your logic is arriving there. This is a long-term shortage. This is something that has gone on over time. In part, it has occurred because of the nature of our school funding system. We have highs, lows, highs, lows. We're hiring, we're not hiring, we're laying off, we're hiring, we're laying off, we're hiring, we're laying off. And we have seen teacher shortages developing as a result of the unpredictability of the system. In this case, there is a substantial amount of additional education required. There is not a pay system that you would look at as a kind of reward benefit system for achieving that level of additional training. The shortages are not specific. They are scattered around the state, but can often be found in rural areas of the state where it's difficult to get these specialists located. So it isn't like a kind of traditional marketplace where you'd be in a population area that would give you that kind of sort of market system in place. Mainly, this takes a teacher license plus the additional training, and these folks are being picked up by larger districts, or they're just not moving into it because the reward just isn't high enough. I mean, it is just an area we need to do some more work on. That's why I say I'd like to come back and talk with you some more about it, I think, during the long session, and see if between now and then, in working with special ed directors and others, we can begin to think about a way to develop a program that begins to eliminate these particular shortage areas in these specialized activities.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Quick follow-up. With the sunset pushed out 10 years, I mean, that's a long way out there. Any particular comment on that and why it is that far out?
Madam Chair, Representative Wilson, two things. On your previous question, we've got some folks here from the Speech Pathology Association. They're going to talk about the shortages and how they're trying to meet that demand that's out there. So I think they can also address that. This to 2026 is in line with several other PERS exemptions that are in statute. The nursing industry was re-upped during the 15 session, and it went to 2026. I think we're trying to keep some of those in line together.
Representative Reardon.
You may have answered my question, sort of, but I just wonder when we're going to see some proposals. I'm really concerned that the PERS folks are, like myself, getting older, and eventually we're not going to be there to fill these positions. So is there a longer-term strategy for whatever it takes for incentivizing or somehow attracting teachers into this field, and then also the other fields that you mentioned might be out there as well? I mean, it's a great question. It's probably a broader question than just this one area. So can we work with you on that? Can we do some kind of proposal? I hate to say, do we need a study group? Because I really would like to get something done instead.
I think, Representative, I think that between now and the long session, we have developed some information, but I don't think it's ready for prime time yet.
Okay.
We've developed some information on where the shortages are. We are talking with the teacher and administrative leadership in the special ed as well as just the school district area, and I think we will be able to come to you in the long session with some ideas. Now, whether these are the right ideas, we'll go through the vetting process, but we'll do it without a work group. Would be our plan, and to come to you with some specific legislative proposals to see if there's. This has been dealt with in part before. If you'll recall, it's been a number of sessions ago, we did some work on speech pathology, just getting some people through the system. We'll bring in some folks then to talk with you about some ways to speed that up, because you're right. I mean, folks on PERS now are obviously getting older. We're all getting older, but we are going to at some point have an absolute shortage of people if we're not real careful. Yeah. So we'll be in to see you again.
Let me know if I can help.
Thank you.
Representative Doherty, do you have something to add to that?
Well, actually, this is just a kind of a comment. In my prior life, I worked with bargaining units with a speech pathologist, and as long ago as 1989, and it went kind of against every grain, we placed the speech pathologist in the Multnomah County ESD at a higher salary level. And part of it is we could not attract them out of private sector. And when I was in college, I worked in the speech and hearing department. And the course of study for a speech and language therapist is totally different from what a teacher is. It's tough. That's why I was in general speech. But this is not a new problem. This is something that has been going on for decades. So that was just a comment.
Representative Hack.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for coming and speaking with us. I am wondering, I appreciate what Representative Wilson brought to our attention in regards to the appearance of it looking like there may not be positions available. Is there a way to set this up so that if you have individuals apply who are not already retired and receiving PERS, that obviously those individuals will be looked at first, and that this would be a second option? I mean, I don't want to say that in a way that says you have to hire, if you only have one apply and they're not the best candidate, you have to hire that one. But at the same time, is there a way to say that those who are in the teaching profession now and who are there, if they applied, you open it up to that first. If you don't get any qualified applicants, then you open it up to this set of folks? Is there a criteria that you could do that so that it would alleviate maybe some of the question of whether or not the perception is? I don't even know if that's...
Madam Chair, Representative Hack, let me just assure you that if there was a long-term employee available, that long-term employee would be contracted with to get them into the district at this point. This is really coming because nobody's applying. And these folks that are coming in under this program are coming in on sort of short-term bases. These are not people who want to have a second career as a speech pathologist where they're looking out over a number of years. They are talked back into staying. They're talked, people are out there working to keep them there. It takes some work. But if you could get people applying as young or middle-aged, whatever, teachers, fully licensed, ready to go, that's who they're after. It's just nobody's asking. And when they do, I'm sure we'll see them gobbled up as employees. They're really, really sought after. If you know someone looking at going into the teaching profession, and this is, I think, going to be part of a solution, encouraging them into these specialties. You're just guaranteed employment in teaching for your career if you go into these kinds of specialty areas. But it's a hard sell right now.
Thank you.
Representative Barretto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, my question was almost identical to Representative Hack's, except that when a school district is always trying to save money and they don't have to pay the benefits package when they hire people back, then that's an extra incentive to hire those that are coming back in rather than fresh out of college.
Yeah, it's certainly, if there was we would tell you if there was some problem. There right now is not a problem like that. And we're just not seeing people choosing to go. This is a necessity. This is not like hiring optional. This is really a necessity just to get people in for these children. Is really, I think probably the bottom line, I'll be sure to say it, the bottom line here is to provide services to these children. And I'm not aware of any problem like the one I think you're reasonably describing. I'm not trying to say that is not an unreasonable question. It is. It's just not it's not the experience.
You mean the part where school districts are trying to save money?
Yeah, I hope so. Unless you've got a plan that we have not seen unveiled yet.
So as I've heard about this issue and looked at this issue over the last few years, I have this perception of what we're really trying to get at, and I'm not sure if my perception is accurate. Certainly more so in rural areas in southern and eastern Oregon. Sometimes just by the very nature of the location, you have a hard time attracting somebody, and then you have a hard time paying them as much as they would get over here. And so as far as that ceiling for hours you can work and not mess up on your PERS, is this really just looking for some latitude there for that part-time, not just half-time, but that part-time person? I see this as really going after retirees to bring them in because they're not looking probably for a job 5 years down the road, and they want to work some. And a lot of teachers I've worked with, they're just not ready to quit hanging around kids. And so they just want a little piece. Is that really the paradigm we're talking about here?
Chair and Vice Chair Springer, the exemption lets them work over what they would work normally. So yes.
It's so as not to penalize them for serving those children.
Okay. So, our next panel. Did you want it now?
You want to go finish this?
Kathy Domingo, and did I mess up the name? You'll let me know, I'm sure. And Donna Woods. Were you coming forward, Genoa? That's what I thought. And so if you would just start off by introducing yourself for the record.
Absolutely. Chair Doherty, Vice Chairs Frederick and Springer, and members of the House Education Committee. My name is Kathy De Domingo. I am a speech-language pathologist, and I am the president-elect for the Oregon Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, as well as the legislative chair. What I'm going to be doing is trying to build a more coherent framework for the problem. And my colleague Donna, who is one of those rural speech-language pathologists who brought this to our attention in the first place, will be able to fill in a lot more of the meat and I think answer some of the questions. I want to start by just framing some of the questions you had with a bit of an outline on what it is to be a speech-language pathologist in the schools and how we got there. School-based speech-language pathologists serve kids from age 3 to 21. Among the disorders they will provide treatment for is everything from the good old kid with a lisp and an R problem to the kid who never developed an ability to speak at all and must use alternative augmentative communication devices. So basically, if you think of Stephen Hawking, he's kind of the pioneer for that. And in between there, they're also dealing with kids who are on the autism spectrum disorder. They have cognitive and developmental language delays. They might have had a brain injury. So this normally developing kid is suddenly stopped in their tracks by a brain injury. That's another part of my life. And some of them just have a funny voice. Those are the simple kids, right? Their caseloads can be, I think Donna told me, and she'll tell you more, 60, she said, was a good number. We know speech-language pathologists who have caseloads greater than 80 kids. They're serving school districts, as I said, 3 to 21, so they might be in a number of different schools in any given week, sometimes in any given day. Put them in a rural district, and that puts a lot more miles on the car and a lot more distance in between their ability to serve those kids. The school speech-language pathologists are doing a number of things from receiving that referral and providing a diagnosis, which results in an IEP, which results in treatment, which results in families. The circle will continue. In order to train a speech-language pathologist, the simple thing is we only have 3 programs, 3 graduate programs. Those graduate programs are recruiting nationally. They can have well over 300 candidates for 30 to 50 slots for graduate students. So the programs are training as hard and fast as they can. And as a matter of fact, Pacific University added a program 3 years ago. Portland State, expanded the number of graduate students that they take. They used to only take, I believe, 25 to 30. Now they're up to 40 to 50, depending on the year. So the universities are doing what they can to increase the number of graduates that they can graduate, but it's clearly not enough. The other factor is to get to your license as a speech-language pathologist, you have to go through a number of, I think, roughly 1,600 hours of supervised work. So as an undergraduate, as a graduate student, you have about 700 to 900 hours that you're getting supervised in schools or in a healthcare setting in all the different areas that we have to be proficient in, from that simple S to that medically complex client, we have to meet a number of different requirements. After that, we have another roughly 1,000 hours that we have to do in what's called our clinical fellowship year. That has to be supervised. The supervisor does not have to be on site, but they have to certainly be with the same employer. So if you're in a district where you're looking for therapists to begin with, to get new therapists into the district is not simple. So I hope, Representative Wilson, that helps answer a little bit of your question about why is this a problem. It's a problem because we're producing them as hard and fast as we can. We just can't. The other factor, I was speaking with a graduate intern who's in my clinic this morning. She's from California. She goes to school at Portland State University, and I asked her how many of her peers within the class of 40 are from in-state versus out-of-state, and she said roughly 10 are from out-of-state. Well, most of those out-of-state folks are going back to their home state. And the other question I had was, if you had a job offer in a rural district, would you take that? And she said, well, the thing I also have to consider is I have a partner who is employed, and that partner's employment is what allows me to be in graduate school full-time. So as they're establishing their career, and these are young professionals, to try to get them to move to now a rural district is sometimes a difficult thing. And I know as a supervisor myself, I constantly get requests from Oregonians who have gone to out-of-state universities. They want to come back. They're trying to find those supervised hours, and I know my clinic can't provide them because we're already meeting the needs of the 3 in-state programs. So this is not a simple solution. You have written testimony that was submitted by Dr. John Tracy, who worked very hard on this issue back in 2005. You also have written testimony that was submitted by Cassie Winveen, who is a former speech-language pathologist and is now an administrator. And she talks very specifically about the challenges of recruiting on the rural districts. And it's not just the recruitment, but the retention. They can sometimes get a person there, but keeping them there in an area where you're young and you want to be where the life is, and that's 2 hours away, is a little bit difficult as well. So we definitely support this. We think it's important for not only the access of services for the kids who need it, and there are, as I said, the caseloads can vary from 60 to 80 kids or more, but also for training the next generation of speech-language pathologists who we want them to understand how beautiful life is in all areas of this state and not just come to Portland or Eugene. Thank you very much.
Yes, Representative Chair Doty and members of the House of Education Committee. I'm a speech-language pathologist from the South Coast Education Service District. I've been there for 40 years in a rural community, and in the last 8 years, I've had 8.
Could I just have you move back just a little from the mic? They're super sensitive, and they're picking you up just fine.
Anyway, that's why I'm a speech therapist. I have been in 8 different, completely different settings and 8 different combinations of settings these last 8 years. I've worked with EIECSC children severely handicapped through high school students. I've worked at 3 middle schools. I worked at an elementary school with a developmental kindergarten. An example how varied my situation is, the school district called me maybe about 3 days before school started. Can you fulfill this job for 3 days? We just need someone for the middle school for 3 days. I go, sure, I can do that. But then later on that spring, the Education Service District contacted me and said, we have a lady who's going on maternity leave and we need someone to cover her high school job for 2 days a week. I went, it's just going to be for 6 weeks. I go, okay, I'll do that. So I was working with middle school and high school, but I was able to fulfill the need for both those school districts or county ESDs. And so,
Donna, can you give us your name for the record, please?
Donna Woods.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I'll try not to interrupt again.
Okay. Right now I'm working, because they had problems fulfilling the need, I'm working at 4 different sites in 5 days. I work at 2 different Head Start sites, 1 middle school, and a high school where they've had real problems finding a speech pathologist to come and work with high school kids. a lot of times when they're recruiting, the people want to come, well, I want to work at an elementary school. So high school's not a big popular place for speech pathologists, but I enjoy them so much. In my Head Start sites that I've been helping out, I've ran into some of my parents that I worked with when they were small children. And they're bringing their children into Head Start. And so I think I have a trust, and they know who I am. A familiarity is established. And they go, Mrs. Woods, my own students have speech problems. And I go, I'm here for them, that's for sure. And then in the high school setting, I've worked with a boy that was in junior high who had an R problem, and he had also some other learning disabilities. He's autistic also. And he could care less about working on his R sound. I don't care about anything like that. Now that I've kind of been in and out working with him because of the need, I've been at the high school now for 2 years, and he's made progress, and he's really, really proud of himself. And since he perseverates a lot on football, his favorite football teams are Pittsburgh Steelers and Denver Broncos. Perfect articulation for R sounds. I can help him. I can base my whole program on that.
That's good. That's good.
But I would have never known that if I just would have popped in for a day, worked there, and then left. I've established. I remembered him in junior high when I was there for a few months. And then I came back to the high school, and there he is. But he sat down with me personally this year and said, Mrs. Woods, I really want to continue working on my R sound, because when I get older and work in a building, I don't want to sound like someone from New Jersey because I live in Oregon. And he was so honest. I went, good point. So I just value my community. I value my community that I work in. I'm happy to be there to fulfill the needs that they need. If they need me to help them out, I will do it. And I just want you to consider the importance of this bill. My supervisor wrote a very excellent letter that I think you guys would really appreciate, because it really explains how hard it is to find people to come to our area. And I thank you for listening.
You or me?
You.
Thank you.
You're taking it home. You're right.
Questions?
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'm just asking this question, and it's not particularly aimed at you two. It's for anyone who can explain to me better line number 9, subparagraph 2. And that is, this section does not apply to any member who retires under the provisions of ORS 238 and so forth, unless the person's date of retirement is more than 6 months before the date the person is employed under this section. Little cumbersome wording there, but I'm just asking, can anybody really explain what that means? I think I know what it means, but why it states that?
So, Richard, do you have anything to add to that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I don't know off the top of my head. I can find out from LC pretty readily, but...
So, Chuck, we're looking at you. Would you come forward, please? And introduce yourself once again.
Chuck Bennett, Confederation of Oregon School Administrators. Representative, I apologize. I was only hearing the end of the question. I wasn't sure where we began.
Sure. Chuck, if I could ask you about line 9 in the bill. This section does not apply to any member who retires under the provisions of this ORS statute unless the person's date of retirement is more than 6 months before the date the person is employed under this section. I think I know what it means, but does it mean that? And why does it request this?
Yeah, if you give me just 1 second.
Be happy to.
I've got Mr. Purrs back here.
Okay, so deals with some sort
Again, for the record, Lori sat for the Oregon School Boards. So currently, when they retire, they have 6 months, which is at 1039 hours.
Right.
So I believe that's where that's coming from. It doesn't apply to those because they're going to work past it.
Okay.
and they lose their retirement.
Does that answer your question?
I'll think more about that. Thank you.
And I can check with PERS if you want me to do something offline and have them respond. I'd be happy to.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be
Right. Happier.
Representative Doherty.
Lori, while we're here, and the thing is, I think a lot of people don't realize with that 1,000 whatever hours, and again, unfortunately, I had to deal with this, is that if you work over X amount of hours, you lose your retirement. And I had a school tutor who worked more hours, and after being 34 years as a high school teacher, she lost her retirement, and her retirement was based upon her tutor wages. And so that's why it's so very, very important to keep those, under those hours. And I don't think a lot of people realize.
And Madam
the
Chair, it's up
severity
to
of
the
it.
employee to also keep track of that.
Yes.
Representative Reardon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question more from my just curiosity and probably won't affect my vote on the bill at all. But I'm just curious, as on your workaday world, I mean, you guys have tremendous education. You bought books. You studied for a long time. You've got a lot of practice. In general, if you had to kind of break down your job, how much of it really uses the full extent of your education, or the highest extent, versus how much of your time is spent doing something that's more mundane, or that maybe could be offloaded to somebody else at a lower educational level?
Representative Doherty and Representative Reardon, we do have people that help us with the paperwork, which gets a little, like I have a SLPA, a speech language pathology assistant, and she does help me with some of the paperwork because it gets overloaded and getting that ready. Also, there might be a student that I need to be testing, and she can, since I've watched her supervise some of my students, she can be in the room next door working with the students while I'm testing another student. So I've been able to, the paperwork is immense, but I've been able to handle it. And I think I get the speech therapy actual sessions are every week. So the paperwork amount or that extra bit, I haven't had a problem with that. It doesn't take away from the students in my field or in my area. I don't know if I answered that correctly, but
I'll stop there, just in the interest of time. Sure. Interesting.
Representative Reardon, can I add to this? Since the last time this came up, the speech language pathology assistant is actually a new profession. It's an associate's degree that was, I think we've been licensing them for roughly 5-6 years.
Okay.
The program was developed specifically
Thank you. That's where I was going with that.
So it's specifically trained in speech language pathology, not just a general teacher's aide who had some extra training, or a teacher who had some extra training.
Perfect. Thank you.
And as we wrap this up, Representative Hack.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just have an odd question, just because I don't live in your world, so I'm just curious. So when you bring the students in, you bring them in for a period of time during the day to do their, I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, to have their session with you, and then they return back to the normal classroom, so on? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a reason why we can't just have speech pathologists that come in and work with kids? Is there a reason why we have to have a teaching degree and this specialty on top of it? Why can't we just have speech pathologists come in and work with students, and then they return back to the classroom to work with teachers? And would that solve the problem if that was the case?
Well, it's actually a model that, Representative Hack, it's actually a model that has been in place for a number of years. When I was going to graduate school in the mid-'80s, we called that the consultative model, whereas the speech-language pathologist was going into the classroom, working with the teacher themselves. And there are school districts where actually the special education teacher is a speech-language pathologist, and they have the entire day. The classroom is theirs. That's where those kids are. So there's a number of different models at play, and so some kids are being pulled out specifically for articulation training, as an example, whereas in a classroom where the kids have more general needs, the speech-language pathologist may be going into the classroom, spending some time helping develop the treatment plan. A teacher, their education, we're educated alongside each other. But if you think about it, like, for example, a physician, The physicians all start off together in the same medical school, and then they go and get they get exposure to different disciplines, and they specialize in those disciplines. I myself have not seen a kid in 20 years. Since I was, pregnant with my oldest, and I work in the adult world. It would take me a little bit of time and mentoring from someone like Donna to get back to where I would competently be able to see a child on my own, because that's just not been my world for more than 20 years. So we all specialize as well. So so just to grant a teacher who's got special education a speech pathology license, our licensure requirements are different.
Well, can I just clarify? I'm not saying that. What I'm asking is, aside from a so I think you're thinking that I don't know if we're on the same page here. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have the specialized degree attached to theirs. But what I'm asking is there a reason for a speech pathologist to have the entire teaching degree? Because they're not in the classroom. They're not in the classroom teaching.
Right.
So yet we're requiring them to have a teaching degree and then go on to graduate school and do this piece. So I guess I'm confused. Is there an importance that I'm missing where they're in the classroom teaching plus doing this? Then I see it. But if they're not, why do we require a teaching degree?
We don't actually require a teaching degree.
That's what I needed.
And I apologize for misunderstanding your question. Actually, in last year's session, we specifically separated out
I remembered something.
Yeah, so we specifically separated out. Now, in all school districts, a speech language pathology license will be sufficient. They don't have to get a teaching license on top of it. That was an old solution. And we're beyond that. But for example, many speech language pathologists, they'll get their undergraduate degree will be maybe psychology, or it might be teaching, it could be all kinds of things. My undergraduate degree is speech language pathology specifically, and then I went on and got my graduate program. But there are plenty of others who come from different. But they have to do post-baccalaureate work to get in. So.
Well, if I can add on this, this is the same thing in the education world. You may have a classroom that has a speech pathologist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a respiratory therapist, all in one classroom, and none of them will have teaching certificates. But they are all trained in the specialty to deal with what a certain child has. You may have one speech pathologist that can really deal with stutterers, another one that is not as good. So it's a real specialty, and you don't really have to have a teaching license for it. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I have a note that says thank you very much.
Yeah,
LC is here to answer specifically your question, Representative Wilson. So if you'd come forward and identify yourself.
Good afternoon. Marisa James from Legislative Council. So your question was about Section 2, Subsection 2.
Yes.
So the first part of that says that a member who retires under ORS 238-280. Those are the early retirement. That's if you're retiring early, so the age of 55 if you're a normal member. Then they impose a 6-month waiting period on being reemployed for those members. And it's really just duplicating the language that's already in the statute that allows for reemployment of retired members. So that's what that is there for.
So then in follow-up, thank you. So then in totally plain language, the individual who wishes to take advantage of this must retire first, and then within 6 months apply?
Chair Springer, Representative Wilson. So if the person retires early, before the normal retirement age, then there's a 6-month waiting period. That doesn't apply if you're just a normal retired member who retires at 58 or later.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So if I could add something to that a little bit. When you're talking about the early retirement, I want to make sure I'm correct and understand that. There's not very many districts that have early retirement plans left, but some districts do, and there was basically an incentive to retire sooner than you would have normally been eligible for through PERS, and this just eliminates that as being the incentive to do this.
Well, Vice Chair Springer,
is that correct?
No, under the regular PERS system, you can retire for a reduced retirement allowance early. So that's what this is about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 4022. I bet you want this back. You want to do this one? Yes. Okay, and what we're going to do is open up a public hearing on House Bill 4050. Representative.
Good.
Some districts have those incentives, and that's why.
And we have lots of people testifying, and we have about 20 minutes. 25. I'll give you 25. But we have about 10 testifying. So. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Barbara Smith-Warner. I am State Representative from House District 45, Northeast Portland, Maywood Park, and Park Rose. And I'm sorry to say I have nothing to say about speech pathology today, but I am thrilled to be here to talk to you about summer learning again. You were all gracious enough to hear me during January Ledge Days, and I'm here to give you some more information about what has become House Bill 4050. As members of the Education Committee, I'm sure that you're all familiar with Oregon's 40-40-20 Achievement Compact, which aims for all Oregonians to have completed high school by 2025, with 40% achieving bachelor's degrees and another 40% achieving associate degrees or certificates. It's an ambitious goal, but that's the kind you need to set if you want to truly transform an educational system. I am here today to ask for your support for another aspirational goal, to provide access to summer learning for all Oregon students by the year 2022. Whether it means the year-round school that many working parents crave, credit recovery for the high schooler who stumbled in geometry this year, or extra educational support for kids in the foster system, Oregon can lead the way in shifting our focus on education from 9 months a year to 12. Now, with 2 kids in public schools, I have long thought that we really send a strange message to our kids about education. We tell them that your education is the most important thing you do, but we only want you to do it 9 months out of the year. And those 3 months off have a really enormous impact. We talk a lot about the achievement gap for low-income and minority kids. These kids aren't dumb. These are kids that are learning at the same rate as their peers during the school year, thanks to a lot of dedicated teachers. But research shows that up to 40% of the achievement gap can be attributed to the cumulative loss of learning that occurs in the summer months, the dreaded summer slide. Many kids from families living in poverty, families struggling to access health care, child care, food, and transportation are the same kids who do not have access to enriching activities in the summer months. House Bill 4050 will create a summer learning policy advisory group that will elevate the discussion of summer learning with the goal of making access to summer learning for every student a state priority. This group will be convened by 3 important partners: the Oregon Legislature, the Oregon Department of Education, and the Oregon State Library. All 3 have important roles to play in expanding access to summer learning. The Oregon State Library, along with members of the Oregon Library Association, already support summer learning through their summer reading programs. Their experience in co-locating with summer nutrition programs and providing content and curriculum to local providers will be invaluable in this work. The Department of Education can help to implement the change in culture that this will require. And the legislature can bring together a broad range of stakeholders from across the state and then get out of their way so they can do their work. The Policy Advisory Group and its members, legislators, teachers, parents, community organizations, school boards, administrators, will seek to reframe education as a 12-month endeavor. Our first priority will be to find out where are we right now, to establish who's doing what in summer learning across the state, because we're not looking for a one-size-fits-all proposal. We want to respect and benefit from the wide range of community-specific solutions to this statewide problem. By starting with an advisory group, we can work together to chart a path in partnership with the many organizations and programs that are already succeeding in our communities and help to foster the creation of many more. Then we will use those best practices to create a roadmap for how we get from where we are to where we want to be. A state that provides access to academically and personally enriching summer learning opportunities for every student across the state whose family wants or needs it. Thank you for hearing this bill. You will find in OLIS a -2 amendment, which establishes committee services as the administrator of this work group. We had a lot of conversation about who we wanted to be the convener of this group. And I, along with the other certified smart people that you'll be hearing from next, am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Representative Springer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony. As I look at the makeup of the committee, I want to talk about that a little bit. One of the concerns I have there, whether I like the idea or not, is the make of the committee really lends itself to be very urban focused. I'm looking at who's going to show up at meetings and who's at the table. I noticed that, and then I also notice that it calls for, I realize it says but not limited to, but that's different than what it calls for, one member of the House and one member of the Senate. And I'd like to see that change from one of each party, quite frankly. So as I look at this, it just jumped out at me. We could really have an urban-heavy committee that, not for bad reasons, but aren't going to be aware of rural concerns.
True. Great. I appreciate that. I think that's a fine suggestion. We can discuss whether we need to put it in or whether we can have a commitment. I've had a lot of feedback from folks about, well, hey, could we add this on too? And the reason that I put but not limited to is my goal of both not having this be enormous, as we see in work groups all the time. When you enumerate too far out, you end up with a huge unwieldy group. And I like the idea of somebody being able to check a couple other boxes. And I also want, I have a focus on making this a statewide thing. And I talked, when I was here in January, I talked with someone in Representative Wilson's office about the Boys and Girls Club is who does that in the Illinois Valley. And there are, the implementers are different all across the state, and that's what's critical. And to me, I'm more interested in finding out what is working in Grants Pass, because maybe that'll help the people in Hermiston, as opposed to saying, well, this is how it's happening in the urban areas, and that's all we want to do. So I hear you, and I appreciate and agree with that feedback.
Thank you. Hey, Representative Reardon.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's really, really important. I've seen offerings for summer programs really decline in my own area compared to what my kids had. Just no comparison. But what I'm interested in is I think it's, we actually look at these once in a while, item I, a statewide network consisting of public-private organizations. So is your intent to look at what is the education system doing today, because it has OSBA and COSA and all the usual folks, which is fine, it should. Or are you really going to draw on assets that are within the community and outside the educational system? Because we have a lot of empty buildings and we have people just hanging around all summer waiting to help kids.
Right. Well, I would say,
I think that really needs to be something that's a really important part of this.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I always forget that part. Madam Chair, Representative Reardon. I think I agree with you, and again, the part of why I mentioned in my remarks about the Library Association, for example, is the idea that there are folks doing this in so many different ways that have that who are used to maximizing resources rather than duplicating efforts. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a lot of what we want to do here. And the line in particular, there is a group that is a national group that is based in Oregon, Oregon Ask, who is very oriented to that. The who is actually implementing this on the ground. They do state work, they do national work. They're a great resource for the work that my staff has done already, that we've done on this, and moving forward. And so we wanted to make sure that they brought that out of the system, of the kind of standard legislative folks, and bringing in that perspective, representing all of those after school organizations that are doing that work already. Good. So yes, that is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative McLean.
Well, I really appreciate what Representative Springer and Representative Reardon had to say, and I really think I is the key. here to making sure that, number one, it's a statewide effort, and number two, that we're looking at what's being done on the ground right now so that we can share and we can duplicate those best practices. And so one of the things that I like about this group is the fact that even though I is a big group of different people that have had different experiences, they are definitely part of the mix of really looking at what the inventory is and where do we go from here to make the very best possible effort during those summer months. So I just
thank you, Madam Chair,
that.
Representative McLean. And I just want to, just a little anecdotal. I met with a teacher in Portland who started a summer program. He teaches at a very high poverty, high ELL percentage school, and he started a summer program for those kids. And it took him months to just get out of Portland Public Schools what summer programs there were available, so he could figure out how he's been into it. That, to me, that first item of what this group will do is so critical, because if we don't know what we have, if we don't have an accurate inventory, it doesn't make any sense for us to move forward. Otherwise, this isn't a let's make up things that everybody has to implement. No, let's find out what's out there, and it hasn't been studied in or reported. I mean, there have been outside groups that we are drawing on already, and we, with the engagement of ODE as well, that's the kind of, we want to maximize what we know about who is doing what where, what's working, what isn't, how do you qualify to be those things, and then how do you establish those best practices so you can, I mean, we talk about it as low-hanging fruit. Is there some low-hanging fruit that we can set up and help districts and schools across the state to implement that's already working in other places where they have similar situations?
Okay, Representative Hack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you just answered my question, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you for bringing this about, by the way. You are going to bring in folks that are working with the very diverse populations, the high poverty, the Hispanic group, the African American group. Those people are going to be a part of this group. They're going to be at the table talking about how they're reaching kids where they are, because I just think, I mean, what the Office of the Governor and Chief Education Officer are going to have their perspectives, but you got to have people with boots on the ground that are out there actually meeting people where they are. And if you are going to do that, are you going to seek out to have representation from every parts of our state in that category, or how will that work?
Madam Chair, Representative Heck, that's the plan and that's the goal. Even when we were recruiting folks to come and testify today, and there are a couple folks who have been involved in our work group already that weren't able to come, but I wanted to have providers who are working with minority and at-risk communities coming and speaking today to demonstrate that this is a significant part of what we want to do. And yes, throughout the state, as much as humanly possible. We've talked about having whole panels that, like having a whole panel of students as well. Like, there was a great message brought up in a meeting we had a few weeks ago about we need student input on this too. What are they finding, useful and reasonable? So having panels of students, having panels of just groups that are working with different minority populations, low-income populations in different parts of the state. That is indeed the goal. And in its defense, I had a parent say to me that some folks who have students who don't go to low-income schools, but who are, but who still need and want to have access to something.
It should be both.
Yes, exactly. It's not just those. It's kids need it everywhere. Kids need it everywhere, and there are pockets of kids in even the highest performing and highest income schools who are going to have need for this as well. So the idea is for it to truly, the same way that we have the aspirational goal of 40-40-20, we need to set a goal if we're going to make some progress on this. We have to set an aspirational goal.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the representative? Okay, thank you very much.
Madam.
Pardon? Oh, Ms. Barreto.
Sorry,
Sure, thank
quickly,
you.
we've got another 9 people to go.
You mentioned bringing people in from outside. Are there other states that are doing this?
Madam Chair, Representative Barreto, that is one of the things that we're going to use the resource of Oregon Ask, and there's actually another national after-school and summer learning group that is based in Salem, who we are going to utilize for just that. As you may have heard, the White House has recently brought some attention to the issue of summer learning as well, so we're hoping to kind of build on that, but the national resources as well as the in-state ones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of the representative? Okay, Representative Springer?
Not of the representative. Staff can answer this. Who, I'm looking through here, maybe I missed it, who will be staffing this committee?
Madam Chair, Representative Springer, the committee's been asked to consider the -2s, which say LAC, which is me. Committee services, the legislature generally.
Okay.
It's in specific in the measure as drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Elizabeth Kushwa, Corinna Lee, Beth, 1, 2, 3, and oh wait, I forgot. You guys, I'm revising this. Elizabeth, you guys can sit down. Please, I'm sorry. Okay, how about Daniel Rowell, Katie Anders, and yeah. Thank you very much. And actually on deck are the 4 people that I just mentioned. Okay? And that's Beth, Karina, Elizabeth. You guys are on deck. Okay, thank you. Make sure you identify yourself for the record.
Okay. My name is Dan Rao from the Native American Youth and Family Center. Thank you, Chair, and all the members of the community for taking time to hear about what our organization has been doing, for many, many summers. I've been with NAEA for, that's our acronym, sorry, I should have clarified that. But I've been with NAEA for over 10 years, and we've been doing these programs and improving them each year. I know we're short on time, but I would like to speak briefly on the challenges the Native American youth of Portland face, and then about summer programs designed to help these students respond to said challenges and strengthen themselves over the summer months. I'm not sure how many of you know, but the disparity in academic performance seen amongst our students, our Native American students, is due to many factors. The Native American community is disproportionately affected by many of our society's biggest challenges: domestic violence, lack of adequate health care, high rates of alcohol and substance abuse, sexual assault, disproportionate suicide rates, and like so many kids, our strained educational system. In looking at that, it's important to understand the legacy of educational institutions with regard to Native Americans as a sordid one, to be quite honest, due to the use of boarding schools to separate parents from their children, and in turn the children from their culture. There is ingrained distrust of schools. You all hear me?
Oh yeah,
okay.
no, it's a very sensitive mic. We hear
cool.
you. Yeah.
Additionally, major gaps were created in the ability to pass on parenting skills, and generational knowledge was lost. Our organization works throughout the school year to help students, help support youth and their parents, as our community works hard to rebuild itself and overcome these historical traumas. Most of the work is done through educational support and strategizing with students and parents to engage teachers, counselors, and set academic and behavioral goals. I know we're short on time, so maybe I'll skip this. With all that work we do in the school year, one of our big challenges that we face is helping students along their educational path, as these problems that they're dealing with in the school year and in life in general are amplified when the students don't have a regular safe place to be during the summer months. Unstable homes and life below the poverty line provide little opportunity for learning and enrichment. The NAEA Camp Rise, one of our mini camps, provides cultural arts, sports clinics, cooking classes, environmental education, gardening, fun science experiments, and other activities for kindergarten through 8th grade students. Our camp is the only option for the majority of these students. Without it, their families don't have the means to get their children involved in summer programs. We've been able to provide youth these programs at times of especially high vulnerability. For instance, children of women taking refuge in shelters, being a place for students recently relocated off reservations to be around other Native students and their culture as they absorb the culture shock of coming to an urban environment, something that is very real for them. Additionally, we're able to provide food for kids who had depended on the school lunch programs as their main source of nutrition throughout the school. The school year. If I could go back really quick, in addition to that Camp Rise, we also participate in the 9th grade Leaders Program, helping students who are preparing to transition from 8th to 9th grade and build knowledge around what that means, what opportunities there are after high school, and that sort of thing. Additionally, we have a summer ascend program where students can work on credit recovery in between the school years. Our problem with this is actually that we're at capacity. We served over 175 kids last year. The Camp Rise alone for kindergarten through 8th grade students exceeded 100 students, and we had many more on a wait list. Moving along, I think the point that I really try to make is I feel that we do a lot of good work for students, but I'm humble enough to see that there are so many other students, not just Native students, African American, Caucasian, Latino, kids from all over the state, from all different backgrounds, many who are living below the poverty line, and parents simply don't have resources to find activities and programs, enrichment programs that is, and certainly not sustained educational programs for the kids. So with that, the Native American Youth and Family Center wholeheartedly supports the Policy Advisory Council on summer learning. We hope that you all, too, will see fit to support this program and begin to explore the options towards bringing about policies and programs that can be implemented to serve all of the youth throughout Oregon. I heard reference to, with some of this other stuff, of kind of metro-centric programs and that sort of thing, but being from Eastern Oregon, I've seen these same gaps out there, the summer slide and all of that. It affects students of all backgrounds, and especially any of those who are more from low-income families and that sort of thing. So essentially, I just wanted to share a little bit of what we do, and we feel we do well, but humbly let you know that we certainly don't think that we've got the fix, and that we need your help for our kids, and more important, as important as that, for all these other kids throughout the state. And so we hope you all see fit to move this further down along the line and see what we can do to support all of these youth.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we hear from Ms. Sanders, and then we'll ask questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Doherty and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Katie Anderson, and I am the Youth Services Consultant at the Oregon State Library. Public libraries have been providing the summer reading program for about 100 years. Every public library in Oregon offers a summer reading program, and approximately 50% of public libraries in Oregon serve communities smaller than 10,000 people. So they're really getting out into the rural parts of our state and providing summer reading activities statewide. Public libraries know the research about the achievement gap and best practices such as the free voluntary reading program and the 40 developmental assets for supporting literacy development and building social emotional skills so youth maintain or improve their reading level over the summer. Last summer, 68,735 children and teens in Oregon completed the public library summer reading program. That means they read enough or engaged in enough literacy activities to be recognized at the end of the program. Public libraries understand that in most cases, the kids who really need literacy and social emotional support during the summer cannot get to the public library due to multiple risk factors such as lack of transportation or low parent engagement. For decades, public libraries have been partnering with community organizations like Migrant Housing and Free Summer Lunch Site. In Jefferson County, they partner with Warm Springs to bring the summer reading program to those children who can't get to the library. Last summer, 35% of public libraries took the summer reading program out to other free lunch sites in their community, and 13% of public libraries had a free lunch site on their library grounds. Last summer, 39% of public libraries did summer reading outreach also at schools, daycares, and/or other out-of-school programs. 40% of public libraries translated summer materials into Spanish, and 18% actually presented summer reading programs and activities in Spanish. Partnering on this project will enable public libraries to share our expertise with other summer learning providers and to extend our reach to engage more youth at risk of falling behind during the summer.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much for what you guys do. Very, very good program.
We got off easy, huh?
Yeah. Got you off easy, yeah. Well, that's because you have such good programs. Okay, the other ones I Beth, Corinna, Elizabeth. Those are the three. Yes. Thank you. If you want to go ahead and start. And we have, I hate to give you guys time, but you have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Ish.
See how fast we can talk. Okay, so I'm Beth Unverzat. For the record, I'm the director of the statewide after-school network. So we focus on after-school and summer programs. We've been in existence for 10 years. We're part of a national initiative funded by the C.S. Mott Foundation and the Noyce Foundation. So we've spent some time, about 4 years now, focused on looking at summer learning. We're partners with the National Summer Learning Association. And so here's why summer. National research shows that students lose about 2 months every summer in equivalency in math and computation skills. Low-income students lose more than 2 months. And it's cumulative, right? So really, this is something we really need to talk about, and we need to do something. And so then also approximately 66% of ninth grade achievement gap between lower and higher income students can be attributed to unequal summer access, right? So if I'm in Lake Oswego, I have access. If I'm in rural Oregon, I probably don't. And we also know that 50% of Oregon students are identified as low income, and 83% of parents support funding for summer learning. We know this because the National After School Alliance did a after-school nationwide survey, and so they did a subsection of the survey that actually looked at what parents believe and what they need. And 45% of parents want their children enrolled in some kind of summer learning program, and only 27% of families have at least one child enrolled. The National Summer Learning Association has been really in the forefront of the research across the country. There are many, many examples across the country of partners that are part of the national network that are working on summer learning initiatives, and we can bring some of that to the table to support this, and as we learn and move forward. So we created a partnership process. We received some funding and did a survey using our partners. We piloted in 2012, just a small little pilot with 4 sites. And last year we served over 20 sites where we actually brought this partnership to bear. In our summer learning partnership, we have we brought together state-level partners, so Department of Education, Child Nutrition, Migrant Education, the State Library, the Commission for Voluntary Action and Service, which has summer internship pieces that could be put into place, Salem Kaiser Education Foundation, Department ODE English Language Arts, and the School Librarian Association, along with OEIB, to have some discussions and to begin this work. We had over 150 people attend a summit that was funded by the National Conference of State Legislators last year. So we've been having these discussions, and we are thrilled that Representative Smith Warner has brought this to you, and we hope that you'll support further conversation and delving into creating some solutions for Oregon. When we did our first survey, It won't go. Anyway, so we did our first survey, and the School Librarian Association helped us to meet the needs. We basically said, what programs are 50% or more free and reduced lunch? They can have summer food. Which ones are not reading at grade level? And where is USDA food, summer food, offered? And what we found is 141 sites, right? So then we used our partners with the School Librarian Association, and we contacted them. We said, are you interested? Is this something you want to talk about? And we do have statistics and some backup on that. So we've started this work, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And I appreciate you listening to us, and I want to turn it over to one of my partners.
Thank you very much.
For the sake of time, my name is Karina Lee. I'm the Executive Director of the Salem-Keizer Education Foundation, former board member with the Salem-Keizer School District. And also, the National After School Alliance has statewide ambassador program, and I am Oregon's ambassador to the National After School Alliance. This work is essential. This conversation is not new. However, the idea of the Advisory Council in taking this conversation to the degree that it deserves is absolutely essential. The Salem-Keizer Education Foundation is the largest provider of out-of-school time programming in Salem-Keizer, the second largest school district in the state. Of our 42,000 children, we are serving nearly 11,000 of them. In the sites that Beth just talked about, of those 141 schools identified, of the number of students, I sat here and did the math. 13,000 of those students are right here in the backyard of the state capitol. This work is essential. We know that these children, all of them, and we are a minority majority district. We have 71% of our children that we're serving are at the poverty level. We have 51% minority students, and we're serving them all. We also have one of the highest homeless populations of students and the highest number of foster care children. So when you're talking about diversity throughout and looking at the types of children that we will be serving, this work is essential, and I and SCEF will be at the table.
Thank you for all you do.
Good afternoon, Chair Doherty, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Kushwa. I'm the Strategic Director for Children First for Oregon, and I will totally abbreviate my comments. You have our written testimony. I will say that, for your information, there are 389,000 children in Oregon living at or near poverty, and that summer learning loss is a phenomenon, although felt by all children, felt more acutely by low-income children. Additionally, expanding summer learning opportunities is one of the concepts in our 2016 Children's Agenda for United for Kids, which we published for United for Kids. This concept is supported by 9 of those participants, so it does go across the spectrum of organizations. And I'll stop there. If you'd like more information, feel free to buzz me. Thank you.
Oh, great. Questions? Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Chair Doherty. Would you give me that number again, the 391,000?
389,000 children living in poverty. Representative, the child poverty rate for children of color is nearly 30%, and 26% of women with young children work in low-wage jobs.
Thank you. And would you had some figures as well on Salem-Keizer. Did you say 51% of Salem-Keizer?
71%.
No.
Oh.
51% of the Salem-Keizer students are minority at this particular point?
Yes.
And when did that go over the 50%?
Just this in the last 18 months. It was near the end of the last school year, and now this school year reporting.
And that is primarily Latino?
Yes.
It is. Okay. What's okay? Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep, Hillsboro's now over 50% also.
Hillsboro's at 50% now, too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, I would like to say that I am not against this bill as I see it. And so rest assured I'm not saying what I'm saying to try to put a hole in this. But as I listen to the testimony today, this sounds to be partially about 40-40-20. But there is a larger social program attached because we're talking after school and we're talking kids who are not eating well. And granted, I'll be the first to say that the world that we live in now is not the world that we grew up in. And this committee has done a number of things to meet that challenge, and this is another one of those things, and I suspect to support it. But really, this is a lot more than just about summer slide, though, isn't it? It's bigger than that.
I think the issues are bigger, but I think that the evidence and the research around summer is so critical. If you think about a teacher who comes back to school and spends about 3 months bringing kids back up, if nothing else, if we could stop summer slide, we would be farther ahead. So we have to come up with creative solutions that actually meet the needs of the kids right where they are. And that, for us, that's the critical piece of it. I mean, yes, there are lots of other issues, but there are places that are serving summer food. There are schools that are available. There are community organizations that are ready and willing to help. And I think that we have to really think outside the box, and summer is the first place to start.
Thank you so much. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for testifying, and second of all, for what you guys do. Very much. Okay, and the last people we have is it Kone with the Library Association, Parasa from Stand for Children, and Matt from Hunger Free. Okay, thank you very much. No, we'll stick Matt on the end. Okay, thank you very much. If you want to make sure you identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Corey Burkle. I'm with the Newburgh Public Library. I'm a children's librarian, and I'm here today on behalf of the Oregon Library Association, which is a statewide organization. So first of all, I do want to say that the Oregon Library Association has no official position on House Bill 4050 yet, since we've only recently seen it. However, librarians, as you know, are huge advocates of summer learning programs, and we would love to see more things that benefit children. As Katie has said, the public libraries have been providing summer reading programs for many, many, many years. Some of our goals are to teach early literacy skills so children are ready to read when they get to school, and also to prevent the summer slide as well. We have summer reading programs that focus on things like reading 20 minutes a day, and those are things that are going to get kids and families into a reading habit as well. So all Oregon libraries provide free voluntary reading programs and also expanded learning opportunities throughout the state. And we have some fantastic libraries in the state doing some really wonderful things. There's been a focus shift in recent years, I would say, solely from the children just coming into the library to getting out into the community and doing some broader outreach, excuse me. We, for example, the Newburgh Public Library works with the schools, we work with Head Start, we work with other community partners, including the free lunch program. Using the Ready to Read funds, we gave away a new book to every child who participated in the summer reading program, and that was just for signing up. So this year we gave away 2,500 new books, and that was using grant funding. Assuming the legislature passes this bill and the council is established, I would encourage the council to build on what is already out there, successful summer reading programs in public libraries. These programs receive state support through the Ready to Read grant program, and there are many wonderful examples of cooperation with schools and other community organizations throughout the state. The Oregon Library Association is ready to work with the council to help expand summer learning for more children. And I'd also like to thank Representative Smith Warner for highlighting the importance of summer learning. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Doherty, members of the House Education Committee. For the record, my name is Parasa Chanrami from Stand for Children. On behalf of STAN, we support House Bill 5040 because it will help Oregon address summer learning loss on a statewide level and lay important groundwork to ensure that all children pre-K through 12th grade have access to valuable summer learning programs. Increasing access to these high-quality programs will be critical to closing the achievement and opportunity gap. We know that summer learning loss compounds over time. By the end of elementary school, students can be, especially low-income students, can be 3 grade levels behind their higher income peers. And if we look at the graduation rates that were recently released, there are huge achievement gaps in the 4-year graduation rates. For students who are economically disadvantaged, they're graduating at 66.4% in 4 years, versus students who are not economically disadvantaged, they're graduating at 83.3%. That's a roughly 17-point percentage gap. And for English language learners, the gap is even wider. For students who are ELL students in our state, they're graduating at 51.2%. And for students who are non-ELL, the graduation rate is 75%. That's 24 percentage points. That's how wide the gap is. It's very important for us to prioritize ending summer learning loss statewide. We really appreciate all of the work that Representative Smith Warner has put into this bill. One recommendation that we do have, and echoing some of the sentiments that were shared by committee members earlier, is to make sure that parents and students from historically underrepresented and underserved communities actually have a seat at the table on the council, because we want to make sure that their voices are heard and they're incorporated in a very intentional way. Thank you again for your time. Really appreciate your attention on this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Doherty, members of the committee. My name is Matt Newell Ching. I'm the Public Affairs Director for Partners for Hunger-Free Oregon. Don't have much to add here, but we are in support of House Bill 4050. On the issue of summer slide, certainly part of that is that we know from experience that hunger during the summer months is higher, and this should not surprise us. Students who eat lunch and sometimes breakfast at school during the summer, often, summer should be a time where kids are happy and playing and are enriched. For many students across Oregon, it's a time when students are at home staring at empty refrigerators. It's a time when food budgets are squeezed because budgets during the course of the year factor in that kids are going to be getting breakfast and lunch. With raising rent prices, food is one item in the budget that often gets squeezed. So when we think about summer slides, certainly much of that is opportunities for enrichment. Some of that is certainly just access to food. And so we envision an Oregon where all kids are returning to school in the fall, well fed, having had enriching activities, and where all kids can thrive. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you all very much for testifying. Your groups do fantastic things for kids, and we'll appreciate, and hopefully we'll get a little further in this process. But thank you very much. Okay, with that, I close the public hearing on House Bill 4050 and open up a public hearing on House Bill 4023. Okay, we have David Williams and Adam Stewart. Pardon? Oh, would you like to explain what the bill is? I didn't do that last time, did I?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 4023 considers certain individuals to be residents of the school district in which those individuals attend school, even if the legal residences of the individuals are no longer within the district because of a district boundary change.
Thank you, Chair Doherty, members of the committee. David Williams with Beaverton School District. I have with me Adam Stewart, the Chief Financial Officer for the Hillsborough School District. He's going to give a very brief explanation of what got us here today, and then I'll wrap up with the bill itself.
Thank you, David. Representative Doherty, members of the committee. Recently,
if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Adam Stewart, Chief Financial Officer for the Hillsborough School District. Recently, the two boards of the Beaverton School District and the Hillsborough School District moved forward with a boundary adjustment, and in meeting with the communities and the boards of the two communities, there was a concern expressed that the students who are currently residing in those two boundary adjustment areas should be able to stay in their respective school districts if they chose. So the intent of this bill is to allow that to happen.
Thank you. And Chair Doherty, just to add again, so technically what the legislation does, and this is a fairly, I think, minor piece of legislation in the grand scheme of things, although major for the roughly 25 to 26 students that it would impact. This would we've adjusted the boundary between the two school districts such that a portion of the Hillsborough School District is now inside Beaverton, and conversely, a portion of the Beaverton is now inside Hillsborough. The legislation would allow students that are in those areas today to remain in the district they were in previously. So students that were in Beaverton that are now technically residents of Hillsborough would be allowed to remain in the Beaverton School District so long as they remain continuously enrolled in the district.
And just for information, what spurred this problem? Is there building out in that area?
Thank you. Yes, Representative Doherty. These are two areas. One is known as the South Hillsborough area, and the other is known as the South Cooper Mountain area. Both were recently brought into the urban growth boundary and are slated for significant development. The current residents in those areas are generally in rural areas that obviously will undergo transformation as time goes by. The intent behind the change of the boundary for the two districts was to make life easier for essentially future residents of those areas, so that the students in South Hillsborough who would have then been, the students in South Cooper Mountain who would have literally been right across the street from a brand new high school we were building, they do not have to bus all the way over to Hill High or Century High. Likewise, students in the South Hillsborough area who would be a stone's throw from those schools would not have to bus further into the Beaverton School District.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. Simple enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is it for our agenda. With that, I close the work session on House Bill 2023. And what we'll do is we'll put some of these up for public hearing this week, and we'll go from there.
Public hearing or public work session?
Public work session. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Anything else to go to the order? Okay, with that, I adjourn the House Committee.